All right. Well, good morning, everyone. The title of my message for this morning is a question. The question is, does it create unity or division? The name of our spiritual center is called Unity. We are the unity of Orville. And that in itself is a very powerful affirmation that says we are united. We are in harmony. We work together. We have peace and goodwill among us and between us. There is strength and power in our unity. Strength and power in unity. And there is a loss of power. There's chaos in our division. Jesus offered such a beautiful teaching about the power of unity. We read in Mark 3:25, if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. A house divided against itself cannot stand. And as humanity, we're like a gigantic family that's living in a gigantic house, right? With all our relations. And wherever there's unity, we thrive, especially in hard times. And wherever there's division, it's like the house has a big hole in the wall, right? And the wind and the rain and the cold come in, and it's miserable. The Apostle Paul offered his followers a powerful teaching about unity that's found in chapter 12 of First Corinthians. Let me read you this, one of my favorite verses, verse 25. So that there should be no division in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part rejoices, every part rejoices with it. Now you are the body of Christ, and each of you is a part of it. If we realized, if we fully realized, if we knew without a doubt that if one person suffers, we all suffer, we'd all want to become healers. We'd want to give our energy to becoming skillful at facilitating reconciliation. We wouldn't want to waste one moment in supporting divisive talk or thoughts or behaviors. Can you imagine what would happen if the cells in your right foot got mad at the cells in your left foot and refused to work with the left foot? Whoops. And every time the left foot would take a step, the right foot would rebel and refuse to move. And you're trying to get up, right, and walk into the bathroom, and your left foot is rebelling and it's at war with the right foot. That would be bad. That would be a bad situation. And so each one of us, we as humanity, we have something very deep to learn in this life. And that teaching is deeper than even being interconnected and even more than being interdependent. We are one vast, intertwined being. We are cells of one body of humanity. One body. We're like a symphony. And a symphony only works when we all play beautifully together, right? I remember in elementary school when we would get our report cards, there was a box that the teacher could check that said does not play well with others. I remember one time the teacher in one of my classes checked that box, and my mom was like, what is this? Does not play well with others. We must learn to play well with others. I've never forgotten that. So in the symphony analogy, when we hear a great symphony perform, the music can move us to tears, and it does so because of the harmonious interweaving of all those beautiful instruments and all the talented players of those instruments, and they're all listening to each other. They're all listening to each other. And they're all co-creating this one incredibly beautiful sound that has tremendous power to inspire. Each musician in the symphony is a cell of one body operating together, united, creating this beautiful harmony. So, we as humanity, we are, you could say, we're the symphony of the Creator. And if we tune our will, if we tune our mind, if we tune our heart, if we tune our being, our every cell, to the divine, to the frequency of love and compassion and kindness, we can play beautiful melodies and harmonies together. We can all together create a heaven realm here if we are tuned and in harmony. On the other hand, because we have free will, if we so choose, we can make noise and we can play discordant sounds by staying unconscious and acting in divisive ways. We have a choice. That's the adventure of it. We always have a choice. One of the most painful things, though, that I can imagine is a bunch of musicians gathered together, not listening to each other, all playing different keys and different rhythms and just creating noise, painful noise. It kind of reminds me of on my trips to India in the early morning, often the little villages, when you wake up in the morning, they have these big sound systems, right, all over the village, and they're blasting music, and they're all playing something different, and it starts about like 4:35 a.m. Um, it was hard for me, but on my second trip, I took those noise canceling headphones and I solved that problem. But it's a good analogy because when humanity is divided and when people are not willing to harmonize, when we refuse to work together, when we keep someone out of our hearts and hold on to judgments, if we could hear that energy as music, it would be painful. It would be screechy. It would be hard to hear. I've always loved the analogy of Saint Francis's prayer when he said, "Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Use me to play the music of love. Use me to play the music of allowing and reconciling and forgiving and choosing to heal division and recreate unity again and again and again." Remember back to January 20th of this year, I don't know about you, but time for me, it just seems like it's all twisted and turned, and I don't know, it's hard to even like believe that January 20th was this year for some reason. It seems like a lifetime ago. But the inauguration, the day that our new president, Joe Biden, was inaugurated, and remember the poet laureate, Amanda Gorman. She was asked by Joe Biden to write a poem soon after he was elected, and for the inauguration, for the January 20th event, a poem about national unity. And there was an interview where she described how she'd been feeling exhausted, and she was really worried that she wasn't up to this monumental task. She said, "I had this huge thing, probably one of the most important things I'll ever do in my career, and it was like, if I try to climb this mountain all at once, I'm just going to pass out." So she worked on her poem, "The Hill We Must Climb." And she managed to write a few lines a day. And about halfway through the poem, on January 6th, when rioters stormed into the halls of Congress, some bearing weapons and Confederate flags, she stayed awake late into the night that night. And she finished the poem. And she added some verses that weren't in there about that apocalyptic scene that unfolded at the Capitol that day. And she wrote, "We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated." She spoke so eloquently in verses that reflected the fragile state of our country. When days come, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. And then she spoke of the possibility of unity and reconciliation. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. There's so much hope in that last line. We are a nation that isn't broken. We're simply unfinished. We are a people who can choose, both individually, doing our own work, and collectively, to work towards greater unity and heal divisions. Now, sometimes as humans, we completely disagree with someone else's view. Have you experienced that? I have this experience with my mom. There are things we so completely disagree on, and yet, we love each other so much. We get together and we enjoy each other's company and we accept that we have differing views. Somehow, we can have differing views while still feeling very much united and connected in the heart. The story of the Supreme Court justices, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was a liberal female justice, she passed away last year, and Antonin Scalia, who was a conservative justice, who passed in 2016, to read about their close bond and friendship is so inspiring. Part of what created their bond was that they both grew up as outsiders to the ruling elite. She was a Jew and a woman, and he was Catholic and an Italian American. And they were both New Yorkers. They both worked at the same place. And they liked a lot of the same things: law and teaching, travel, music, and a meal with family and friends. But they were so very different in their views. Excuse me. They were so different in their views of the law. And there's a humorous story from Scalia's son about how his father lamented, in a good-natured way, that Ruth described his view of a certain case as less than fully baked. And the son said, to his dad, well, it could have been worse. She could have said your ideas were half baked. And Scalia replied with a grin, no, no, this was worse. It could mean I'm only 1/4 or 1/5 baked. It was just so funny. But what was so inspiring about their friendship was they really demonstrated how to welcome debate and differences. They disagreed on some of the most divisive issues of our day, and yet, not for a moment did one of them think the other should be condemned or ostracized. And more than that, they actually believed that what they were doing, arriving at their opinions thoughtfully and advancing them vigorously, was essential to the national good. They felt with less debate, their friendship would have been diminished, and they believed so would our democracy. So a huge key here is respect. Respecting. The other has a right to their opinion. Respect means we don't need to put someone else's opinion down. We don't need to put them down. And we don't need to make things personal, right? And this is where I think we go off the rails a lot in a lot of conflicts. We make things personal. And when we stop being respectful, and our comments turn to insults and harsh judgments, at that point we've lost the ability to listen. Like the great symphony where all the musicians listen to each other. And when we lose that ability to listen, we've lost the ability to communicate, to effectively discuss the issue at hand. So I'm really excited to bring Donna Kramer next Sunday to speak to you on Marshall Rosenberg's excellent work on nonviolent communication. One of the things I asked her to focus on in sharing his teachings is he describes 4 ways we can choose to hear a message, in that listening. There's 4 ways he describes we can hear a message. And the first is that from the way I hear it, what's happening is definitely your fault, and my mind is busy telling me you are the problem. Not a very effective way to listen. The second way, the way I hear it, whatever's happening is definitely my fault, And my mind is busy telling me I'm the problem, you know, self blame and self shame. Not so effective either. There's a third way. The third way is I hear the message and pause to take a moment to gauge what emotional reaction I'm experiencing. And then I connect my feelings to the met and unmet, the met or unmet need within me. There's a need within me. And so the key here is I pause and I'm mindful of my emotions and my emotional reaction. What am I feeling? Why do I feel this way? Is there something I was needing that I didn't get? If we can do this, not react right away, but pause and breathe, reflect on what we're feeling. It takes the communication out of the realm of blame and reactivity and defensiveness to actually wanting to understand both myself and how I'm feeling and also how the other person feels. And that leads to the fourth way of hearing a message, which is I hear the message and I pause to become curious as to what you might be feeling and needing in this situation. That's what Ginsburg and Scalia could do. They could listen, they could hear each other. They were curious about each other's position. I think they were fascinated really with each other. They were like two different planets. Wow, you're really fascinating. And it may not have changed their mind or their view or opinion, but it created a respect for the other view. The respectful listening was always there. Now, people often ask me, how do I remain friends with someone I disagree with on some really big things, right? Well, let me offer 5 suggestions. Number 1, let friendship be a safe place to disagree. See if you can feel strong enough in your sense of self to state your opinion, but not need to force it on the other person. Number 2, don't ever devalue the other person. Use I statements and avoid you attacks, right? Ask them why they believe what they do and share the merits of your position versus the hazards of theirs. Don't attack their character, remain humble, and offer respect, and keep the reciprocal respect going. So important. Third thing is consider your motives. This is really key, especially if you're really attached to being right. Because the mind, the ego, it always wants to be right. The heart wants to be close, right? The heart is looking for the understanding. The ego is looking for the I'm right and you're wrong, right? So examine your motive. See if you're coming from wanting to be right or if you're coming from wanting to understand and be closer. The last thing, really establish that your friendship is more important than the disagreement. My love and closeness to my mom is so much more important than any disagreement. And sometimes we just agree not to talk about the subjects, right? It took both of us a while, like a lifetime, to realize that to cherish our time together and to not waste it being at odds with each other was what we wanted to spend our days doing with what time we have left. It's so precious. The relationship, the love is more important than anything we disagree on and any opinions. That's all surface stuff. The love is real. The love is deeper. The love is so much more valuable. There's a beautiful quote from Nisargadatta, an Indian sage, who said, "The mind creates the abyss, or the abyss. The mind creates the abyss. The heart crosses it." I love that. If we're feeling divided, if we're feeling separate from someone in our lives, the mind tends to tell a lot of stories of why we should keep up the separation. But the heart wants peace. It wants healing. It doesn't want to hold on to suffering. It's wiser than that. The mind creates the abyss, and the heart is ever willing to cross it. Who is your master? Where do you give your power to? The mind or the heart? So this is the choice we have every day. Do we live this life? Do we live this day from our heart, from loving kindness? Or do we live this day wanting to make right and stay divided and, just empower our ego. The evolved soul knows there's a better way when the mind wants to stay separate, right? So I'd like to close with a beautiful poem today from Thich Nhat Hanh, someone who has taught this world so much about being peace, and choosing unity, even in the face of people who are stuck in hatred. Remember, Thich Nhat Hanh, he refused to take sides back in the time of the Vietnam War, and he was kicked out of his country, his own country. This great monk. Most of his life, he had to be kicked out of Vietnam, and now he's back in Vietnam. He's welcomed back. He's considered a national treasure. There has been reconciliation, and he's living his last days there in the land he loves, his homeland. So let me read you his poem. Promise me this day, promise me now, while the sun is overhead exactly at the zenith. Promise me, even as they strike you down with a mountain of hatred and violence, even as they step on you and crush you like a worm, even as they dismember and disembowel you, remember, brother, remember, man is not our enemy. The only thing worthy of you is compassion, invincible, limitless, unconditional. Hatred will never let you face the beast in man. One day, when you face this beast alone, with your courage intact, your eyes kind, untroubled, even as no one sees them, out of your smile will bloom a flower. And those who love you will behold you across 10,000 worlds of birth and dying. Alone again, I will go on with bent head, knowing that love has become eternal. On the long, rough road, the sun and the moon will continue to shine. Who we truly are is love. And the world in its unconsciousness can be hard to face. But as Thich Nhat Hanh says, the only thing worthy of us is compassion for ourselves, for each other, and for this whole human condition. Let us be the peace we wish to see. Let us be the instruments committed to healing division. Let us truly be unity. Thank you.